In this movie, I want to make a slight digression to talk about Autoload. And I'm calling it the undeclared object safety net. And you'll see why that is. You'll see why it basically saves you if you have undeclared objects. Now first, let's see what the problem is, and then we'll see how to solve it. Let's say, first of all, that I did not have require once includes user.php. That's a necessary step for us to have user defined so that we can use it here. Let's just try loading that up without it. I'll reload the page. Fatal error, class user not found in, and it tried to find it inside this file, inside index.php, and it says it was never defined. Now, of course, if you're a good programmer, you're going to want to always use this require once. But I want to show you this safety net that can help get you around it if that's not the case. Let's open up our functions.php file. And we've got a few functions in here already. I'm just going to fold those up so they're out of our way. But we're going to add a new one. And it is this autoload function. It's __ autoload. Now that has the same format of the __ as we did for our constructors and destructors and clone, but it's not inside an object. It's just a standalone function that exists outside of an object. Now, of course, if we're going to make use of it, we've got to also make sure that we require our functions in here, functions, so that we actually have access to it. So now autoload will have been defined. When it gets to the point where it says, oh, user, that's not defined, I have an error, it'll stop and first check to see, is there an autoload function defined? And it'll call it. And it'll ask it basically, hey, what should I do? And it'll pass in as an argument the class name that it's looking for. In this case, user with an uppercase. So then we can provide instructions on what it should do to handle it. So I'm going to try just making some simple instructions here. I'm going to say take the class name, make it all lowercase, then put PHP at the end, see if the file exists, and if it does, require it. And voila, problem will be solved. If not, then die with an error that says the file could not be found. And in that case, when it's not found, we'll get something that's prettier than the ugly error output we got before. So let's try it now and see if that works. We'll switch back over to Firefox. The file user.php could not be found. Well, that's because we have to tell it where to find it. So in this case, this function is actually looking from index.php. So I'm going to have to put a ... space includes to get into the right directory where that class might be. So that's going to be my includes directory. That's where everything is. Let's take a look again and see if that works. And now it works fine. That's why I've called this path. This is going to be the path that it takes to get there. And we're going to work on this a little bit later. We're going to talk more about paths and we're going to refine it a little bit. But for now, this will tell everything that's in that root directory of public how to find it. Now we're going to run into a problem, of course. If we're not in the root directory, if we're in a subfolder or something like that, we'll have to have another way to navigate to this. We'll explore that a little later. But for now, I want to emphasize the autoload function and let you see that having this base function defined will tell PHP how we can handle it. Instead of user, let's just try making up another one. Let's say junk equals junk. Actually, let's make it create a new junk, which doesn't exist, of course. Let's go back to Firefox. The file junk.php could not be found. So we get something nicer than that old error message. But the main point is that that autoload function gives you a safety net for cases when it hasn't been defined yet. Now, I know you're all going to be good programmers and you're going to go ahead and define it anyway, but it's nice to have this here so that it can actually find it. And you could have several directories. Maybe it looks in 5 or 6 places to see, is it here, is it here, is it here? If not, then finally fail. It can be as complex as we want, but it lets us have the opportunity to try and sort it out before we just get an error. Now, in the next movie, let's take a look at how we can build a class that will handle our sessions.